A rare World War II tank has been discovered under mud in the Warta River in eastern Poland. The British-made Valentine is a unique find since there are no other preserved examples anywhere in Europe.
When the war finally fell silent, thousands of abandoned German tanks remained scattered across a fractured continent, each one carrying the weight of a conflict that refused to end neatly. As the Allies moved in to gather them, new discoveries complicated every assumption about victory's aftermath. Their challenge was only beginning. The war ends, but the machines remain. In May 1945, the collapse of Nazi Germany left the battlefields of Europe littered with armored vehicles that no longer served an army, yet continued to shape the landscape. Panthers, Tigers, and Panzer IVs sat immobilized across rural roads, shattered towns, and forest clearings inside what had once been the industrial and military core of Germany. Many had been abandoned during desperate retreats, their engines ruined by crews who refused to surrender them intact, while others remained surprisingly complete, except for the worn mechanical systems that had carried them through years of relentless combat. Allied forces entering these regions found themselves confronted not only with the symbolic remnants of a defeated regime, but also with a logistical burden unmatched in scale. Technical intelligence teams moved quickly to catalog each vehicle, determining its condition and potential value, while engineers worked to secure sites overflowing with damaged armor. The sheer variety and unpredictability of what they encountered forced them to rethink how a post-war army should handle its predecessors' war machines. These early assessments laid the foundation for the far more complex challenge ahead, as the Allies attempted to transform a landscape shaped by conflict into one capable of supporting reconstruction, unraveling the scale of the armored ruins. As Allied recovery teams spread across the broken terrain of Germany, they realized that abandoned tanks were not simply scattered leftovers, but pieces of a vast mechanical puzzle whose full shape had yet to emerge. United States technical intelligence units operating near sites such as Oberursel and Geldorf began cataloging vehicles that varied wildly in condition, ranging from nearly functional Panthers missing only fuel to gutted hulls stripped for parts during the war's frantic final months. British Remy engineers working around Hillersleben and Sennelager encountered storage yards where rows of immobilized armor presented challenges that blended technical curiosity with logistical strain. Soviet trophy brigades advancing through Silesia and into Berlin found similar patterns, although the sheer volume of equipment accelerated their efforts to collect, assess, and ultimately repurpose whatever could still be moved. The most unexpected revelations arrived when Allied forces located concealed underground complexes that had been constructed during the last phase of the war. Inside these tunnels and cavernous storage chambers, teams uncovered more than 11,000 armored vehicles and components that had never reached operational units, transforming the perceived scale of German wartime production. Many of these vehicles had been positioned for contingency defensive plans, and their sudden discovery required the Allies to develop new extraction strategies involving temporary rail lines, reinforced access ramps, and specialized dismantling crews capable of navigating unstable subterranean spaces. The presence of this hidden reserve challenged earlier assumptions about the true size of Germany's armored fleet, and forced planners to recognize that their task extended far beyond ordinary battlefield clearance. With each new depot surveyed and each cache documented, the Allies gained a deeper understanding of how industrial mobilization, strategic desperation, and concealed infrastructure had shaped the war's final chapter and the post-war landscape that now demanded careful management. The race to understand German engineering. Once the vast inventory of surviving German armor had been gathered into controlled sites, the Allies recognized that dismantling these machines without first understanding them would waste an opportunity to decode the technological principles that had shaped the war's most formidable armored units. At facilities such as Aberdeen Proving Ground in Maryland, American engineers began a series of structured evaluations that approached each Panther, Tiger, or Jagged Panther as both a battlefield artifact and a mechanical case study. Crews documented the craftsmanship visible in the precision ground optics, the ballistic performance of long-barreled high-velocity guns, and the complex final drive systems that had repeatedly failed under field conditions. revealing how German engineering had prioritized firepower and protection over long-term sustainability. These findings helped United States analysts refine their understanding of which design philosophies enhanced combat effectiveness and which features created maintenance burdens that could cripple operational readiness. British teams working inside occupied Germany conducted similar analyses, studying sloped armor geometries, suspension layouts, and turret ergonomics as they compared these captured vehicles against the capabilities of their own Sherman and Churchill fleets. Mechanics stationed at proving grounds in the British zone recorded the practical challenges of servicing engines and transmissions that required extensive disassembly for routine repairs, generating reports that balanced admiration for German innovation with clear recognition of its strategic limitations. Their work informed early post-war debates within the British Army about future armored development, particularly regarding the integration of advanced optics and the need for more accessible mechanical systems. The Soviet Union approached the process with its characteristic focus on ruggedness, testing captured Panthers and Sturmgeschütz variants under harsh training conditions at sites in Eastern Europe. Evaluations confirmed wartime impressions that German armor excelled in frontal engagements, but deteriorated quickly when subjected to sustained operational demands. These comparative studies provided Soviet designers with insights that later influenced the evolution of tank programs transitioning from the T-34 lineage toward more modern platforms. Across each Allied faction, the examination of German armor became a technical dialogue about the future of mechanized warfare, setting the stage for the crucial decisions that would determine what to do with the immense steel inheritance now resting in their custody. Steel reborn into resource and terrain. As the technical evaluations reached their conclusions, the Allies confronted the essential reality that thousands of armored vehicles still occupy depots, rail yards, riverbanks, and former battlefield corridors throughout Germany, where their continued presence threatened reconstruction efforts and strained limited administrative capacity. The Allied Control Council responded by issuing directives that classified German armored equipment as prohibited material, a designation that required its systematic removal from public access and eliminated any possibility of future militarization. This mandate triggered a coordinated demilitarization campaign in industrial regions such as Bochum, Essen, and Magdeburg, where steel plants accustomed to wartime production suddenly became engines of disassembly, employing workers who used torches, cranes, and rotary saws to cut Panthers, Panzer IVs, and Sturmgeschütz vehicles into recyclable segments. The recovered steel flowed directly into reconstruction projects that supported bridge repairs, housing initiatives, and manufacturing restarts, demonstrating how the remnants of mechanized destruction could be redirected towards civilian recovery. However, not every tank followed the path from depot to furnace. Allied engineers discovered that armored hulls provided structural mass that could stabilize weakened terrain, leading them to incorporate damaged vehicles into embankments along waterways such as the Enns River in Austria. Similar strategies emerged in quarry sites and landslide-prone regions across Central Europe, where buried hulls reinforced slopes that had been destabilized by wartime bombardment. In these places, armor that had once advanced through contested landscapes gradually disappeared beneath soil, foliage, and sediment until it became indistinguishable from the environments it now supported. This transformation illustrated how the physical legacy of the conflict persisted in unexpected ways, demonstrating that the afterlife of German armor extended far beyond the boundaries of traditional military history and into the evolving geography of a continent determined to rebuild. The afterlife of German armor. Even as thousands of tanks were reduced to scrap or buried within the reshaped terrain of post-war Europe, a surprising number escaped destruction by entering the service of nations whose militaries were rebuilding under intense financial and political constraints. France, struggling to reconstitute its armored forces after years of occupation, integrated Panther tanks recovered from southwest German depots into the 503rd Combat Tank Regiment. Crews appreciated the vehicle's excellent optics and formidable guns. Yet, maintenance reports soon revealed the cost of operating machines designed for an industrial system that had ceased to exist. Workshops frequently resorted to cannibalizing multiple hulls to keep a single tank running, demonstrating how battlefield strength could be undermined by fragile mechanical underpinnings. Czechoslovakia, once a major center of German armored manufacturing, repurposed surviving Panzer IVs and Sturmgeschütz vehicles, while continuing production of the Hetzer design for domestic use and export to Switzerland. These utilitarian tank destroyers, valued for their reliability and modest logistical demands, extended the influence of German engineering into conflict planning across Central Europe. Spain, operating Panzer IVs supplied during the war, maintained its fleet well into the 1950s before transferring surviving vehicles to Syria, where they were eventually deployed along the Golan Heights during periods of regional tension. Other states, including Romania, Bulgaria, and Yugoslavia, absorbed German armor into their early post-war inventories, using the vehicles primarily for training as Soviet-designed equipment became increasingly available. Across these varied contexts, the reuse of German tanks underscored how military necessity could prolong the life of machines originally built for an entirely different strategic landscape. Their post-war journeys revealed the fluidity of technological identity, as tools once feared on European battlefields adapted to new missions, new terrains, and new geopolitical demands. What these forgotten machines tell us today. As the last German tanks disappeared into furnaces, riverbanks, and foreign armies, their physical remnants continued to influence a world attempting to rebuild from devastation. These armored vehicles, once symbols of advancing power, became reminders of how industrial warfare leaves technical, environmental, and emotional consequences that persist long after treaties are signed. Their transformation from battlefield assets into research subjects, recycled steel, or hidden geological strata, revealed how societies reinterpret the instruments of conflict when the urgency of survival gives way to the pressures of reconstruction. Engineers who studied their designs carried those insights into the emerging architecture of Cold War militaries, shaping decisions about durability, mobility, and the cost of over-engineered complexity. Landscapes reinforced with buried hulls demonstrated that even discarded war machines could alter the physical contours of the post-war continent, becoming silent participants in civilian life. These intertwined legacies highlight the enduring truth that technology built for destruction continues to shape history long after its engines stop running. The tanks that once shaped a fractured continent now linger as muted impressions within steel, soil, and collective memory, reminding us that technology's consequences rarely vanish with surrender. If this journey offered new insight into their hidden afterlives, consider subscribing to continue exploring the stories that still shape our world.